You're listening to the Utah Checkdown podcast. And now your host, Josh Furlong.
Welcome back to another edition of the Utah Checkdown podcast. I am Josh Furlong. Happy to be back with you again for another week. Got a special episode this week, and we're gonna get into that here shortly. But first, let me tell you about our partners at Canyon View Credit Union. At Canyon View Credit Union, it's on the house. Close a mortgage and get a free appraisal up to $600. To learn more details or apply, visit canyonviewcu.com. All right, let's just jump into this. I've got some special guests today. Let's bring them on. So we got the one and only Bryan Brown. Bryan Brown, you may see him roaming the high school sidelines this year. We'll see. There may be some of that stuff, but we'll have him on today, as well as your favorite former beat writer who you hated when he first got here, but now you love, in Josh Newman. So how are you gentlemen doing today?
Hi, boys. Good to be here.
How does it feel to be so loved, Josh, first off?
So loved. Yeah, I feel so loved. Getting the love from the Utah fans with the mailbag, and BYU fans still hate me, and Texas fans were always sort of indifferent. So I'm getting all of that at once here as football is upon us once again.
I still love the full circle moment of your first game covering Utah was against Texas. And that is also the moment where you had a take that really pissed off Utah fans. And you know, it started things off on a right note. And then you became the beloved guy. So, you know, it all worked out in the end.
I don't know, man. I don't take myself too seriously. I try not to take myself too seriously. Try to work and try to keep things light. And I don't know, man. Utah fans sort of bought into it. So let's have some fun with this. I'm very, very excited for this.
Let's have some fun. Okay, so let me tell you what we're gonna do today. We're gonna do what I call the hot takes draft. We're gonna come up with a bunch of hot takes. We're gonna come up with a bunch of different things that could be reasonable. They could be scorching hot. They could be mediocre takes. They're basically takes about the Utah football season or the Big 12 in general. We'll let people decide. The thing is, we don't know what each other's hot takes are. And so we're going to do this in a fantasy football tiles draft. So we'll have a draft where the first pick goes first. Obviously, they say their hot takes. We'll react to that. And then we'll move to the second and third. The third person, like a snake draft, will then get the fourth pick. And then we'll go in reverse order and keep going the snake style. So we're going to try to hit up a bunch. We're trying to get a bunch of hot takes, react to them, try to give you some insight while still doing this. Some of these may be outlandish and not actually reasonable, probably most. But some of them may have some validity in what could actually happen this season, and so we're going to see. So we may go off the rails immediately, as Bryan wants us to do. There may be some sanity. You're muted right now, Bryan. Sorry. I don't know what's going on.
My mic.
There we go.
My mic decided to mute me automatically. That was weird.
They knew your hot takes were too hot.
And I want to point out to all the BYU fans that responded to your tweet on Twitter or X or whatever we have to call this now, saying that Utah is not going to be good this year, hot take, especially if you're a BYU fan.
Agreed.
So if we're going to set the table with hot takes, like some of this is going to be a little
fiery,
spicy.
That's right. And I did petition the Twitter bots out there. No, I don't know. They're not all bots, but the Twitter.
Just 70%.
Oh, yeah, they're all bots.
They're all bots. I did ask for people on Twitter yesterday for their hot takes. At least for me, they didn't weigh in on what my hot takes are going to be for the season, but I do have some at the very end. I want to read some of them at the end, and we can go rapid fire and maybe give like a quick take on some of those. But are we ready for this, boys?
Born ready.
Okay.
It's go time.
Okay, so I did my little spinning wheel. I can't pull it up here because for whatever reason I can't get that to work. And so the first person in today's draft is the one and only Bryan Brown. I took second, and Josh Newman is third. So he gets the third and fourth pick, and we'll go that way. Yep. So Bryan's got a scorcher. He told us before this that he's got a scorcher, and I'm really curious where this is going to go. So we're just going to let him have the floor.
Just for just for the fans, we don't know what's coming from one
No,
another.
no.
So we're reacting as you're reacting.
Let's go, Bryan.
Josh Newman was actually a Chris Hill psyop from birth and is an athletic department plant to get Utah fans excited about Utah football this season.
Wow.
We're off the rails. We're off the rails.
I was not
It's a
expecting.
theory.
All business, boys.
It's a
All
theory, but
business.
the real thing is I'm an out of work sports reporter who has spent all summer getting rejection emails and interviewing to no avail. And now my friend Josh Furlong is allowing me to do a little bit of work for KSL just so I don't lose my mind. That's where we are right now.
No, but tell us the real story, Josh. You're a plant.
The signs
been
are all
called worse.
there. East Coast guys. Chris Hill was at Rutgers at one point in time. There's too much. This is not a conspiracy theory. I've done research. I've done my research.
He's gonna pull the receipts here soon.
I love it.
All right. Well, that's the first hot take. We got anything more on that one?
That's just that Utah fans love Josh.
I know.
Like the celebration has been. I love it. I'm here for it. It's great.
He's just hogging the sunshine. Jeez.
I have
It
nothing
must
to
be
add.
nice to feel loved, though, right, Josh? I know that's never happened to you growing up on the East Coast, but
I mean, look, it did make me a little nostalgic for for my time at the Salt Lake Tribune and the stuff I was able to experience. Look, I covered Utah at this tremendous transformative time. Look, went through the COVID season of 2020, and Ty Jordan's death and Aaron Lowe's death, and those were things that we all had to deal with and write about and process. And the 21 season, they break through to the Rose Bowl. 22, they go back to the Rose Bowl. Rising's ascension to sort of like Mount Rushmore level type of Utah players. So yeah, I'd be lying if I didn't say that. Doing a little bit of work for Josh at KSL is maybe a little for what I was able to experience in my time covering Utah.
That's awesome. We'll always have you here, and if I could get a job for you here, I would do it in a heartbeat. I'm still pushing for that one of these days, so we'll get there.
Quoted. Done.
Mark it down. All right, I guess I'm up next. I'm going to take my draft, and I'm going to stick it with Utah. I'm going to go with Devin Dampier. And so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give a little context first. Devin Dampier last year at New Mexico, which I think we can all assume or understand that New Mexico is not Utah, right? At least in the way that these two teams are built traditionally over the last decade plus. Utah is in a far better situation, has been in a better situation, has the better talent all around, generally speaking. So Devin Dampier last year was on a team where he was essentially, asked to be the star. He's the guy in high school where you can clearly see the D1 talent, but everyone else around him is just not up to snuff. Not to say that New Mexico didn't have that same thing, but you're going to call on him time after time after time. So last year he passed for 2,700 yards, almost 2,800 yards, and then rushed for almost 1,200 yards, so 1,166, okay? So I'm going to go off just a very basic stat line. We'll start it off, and it may be hot, it may not be. I think, I'm operating under the assumption that Utah is going to be fairly solid this year. I think we think that with the offensive line and with where Utah can be, they're going to be far, far different from what they were last year. So it's not quite the hottest of hot takes, but I think it's still reasonable while still kind of being a stretch. And I'm going to say that Devin Dampier passes for 3,000 yards and rushes for 1,000 yards. Becomes the first 1,000-yard rusher for Utah as a QB. Go.
So this actually takes one of my takes off the board because I thought I put down as one of my draftable items, Utah will have their best statistical season in just pure volume output, and Devin Dampier will be a Heisman candidate.
Oh, okay.
And so I think a lot of the reason why that sets up is what Josh said. The offensive line looks really good. This is a offensive scheme and offensive coordinator that's coming in that's going to really revitalize this group and this team because they're bringing energy. They're bringing schematic fun. I don't know how else to describe it. Like a lot of what Andy Ludwig did was really smart, really precision. Spencer Fano described it at media days as being like militaristic almost. And Jason Beck likes to get loose with it. And I think that's going to really energize this group. And I think Devin Dampier playing with higher caliber players is only going to elevate his play. The things that I was looking for Utah to make changes from last season to this season were offensive scheme and things that were adaptable to players and things that you could do if you had injuries that would make them more flexible. And I wanted to see them make changes in terms of how they managed player fatigue. There's just no other way to describe it. And I've already seen both of those things in comments from Kyle Whittingham throughout camp. So maybe this one isn't as hot a take. It's kind of just what the evolution will be.
I think it's a little bit of a hot take just because you're talking about this kid who, again, New Mexico, step up in class from the Mountain West to the Big 12. You don't, and maybe this is just me, but like, I don't think we fully know what you're getting out of Dampier until you know whether he can translate from the Mountain West to the Big 12. Mentioned in the mailbag the other day, 12 interceptions last year in New Mexico against Mountain West defenses. Completed like 58% of his passes. Those are not good numbers. Those need to be vast improvements. I'll say this: if he passes for 3,000 and rushes for 1,000, they're playing meaningful football in November, and they're in the mix for the Big 12 championship game. And I don't know that he's going to the Heisman ceremony, but that's a monster season. And if Utah's playing for the Big 12 and he's putting up those numbers, I suppose you can't rule out on the possibility of him ending up in New York. I just think we need to let's see what he looks like versus UCLA. And I say that as a glass half empty sort of pessimist. Let's see what he looks like against UCLA before we start, saying that he's going to go for 4,000 all-purpose yards. But your points are well taken.
So here's some little more context on it based on kind of some history with Utah. So Tyler Huntley in 2019, which is considered one of Utah's best seasons outside of them actually like postseason, right? Like they got that Pac-12 championship and just fell apart. Injuries happened, everything happened. Tyler Huntley in his senior season threw for 3,092 yards. Pretty decent, right? Okay, Cam Rising, his last real full year, their second year of the Rose Bowl when they go play against Penn State, he throws for 3,034 yards. Those are two seasons that Utah is looking at as being, I wouldn't call the pinnacle of their success, but I would say it's high up there, right? Like in the new era of Utah football, those 2 years, you can throw 21 in there, but he threw for less than 2,500 yards, different type of team. But you've got teams that are just or quarterbacks that are just barely getting over that 3,000 mark, right? So if Dampier is at 3,000, I have to assume that, like you said, they're in that conversation for the Big 12 title, right? They, or they're just like this high-powered offense, but they can't stop anything. I doubt that. I think if he's throwing for 3,000 and rushing for 1,000, there's a high probability that defense is doing its job and they're winning a lot of games. So I think, that's a good benchmark to look at. Last 2 years with Wilson and Barnes, 1,500 yards. So you're doubling your production in terms of just passing. And if you can get double production in passing, Utah's going to be just fine. All righty then.
I think double production would have been enough last year to get it done. Sorry, Josh. Go ahead.
No, sorry. What were you saying, Brad?
I was just going to say double the production last year would have been enough to get into the Big 12 championship game.
For sure. I mean, they were in close games, right? Like, there may not be a perfect, easy transition, but I think there were so many one-possession games that had you had just a, mediocre offense, you're fine. So it is a hot take because that is still reaching kind of the pinnacle of Utah's depth, but I still think it's one that it's obtainable if he can obtain kind of that level of production that he did at New Mexico. So, all right, Josh, you got the next two.
All right, so we're going to stick with what's possible for this Utah team, right? You think Dampier's going to have a big season. You think it's all going to translate. He's capable of 4,000 all-purpose yards. Fine. Utah is going to start this season 9-0.
Ooh.
And I'll say, I hate this take. But I'm prepping and I'm looking at the schedule. All the team, well, not all the teams, but most of the teams of consequence in the Big 12 that you think are going to be good, they have to go to Rice Eccles. Texas Tech, that game's at Rice Eccles. Arizona State, that game's at Rice Eccles. Kansas State late in the season, not the prohibitive Big 12 favorite, but I think a lot of people have sort of zeroed in on Kansas State as the team best suited to win the Big 12. They have to go to Rice Eccles. Again, there's potholes, right? You have to go to West Virginia. You have to go to BYU. I hate this take. They're going to start 9-0, and they're going to show up in Baylor. They're going to show up in Waco at Baylor in mid-November with everything to play for. And when I say everything, Big 12 championship game is on the table. If you're 9-0 in mid-November, 12-team college football playoff is on the table. I hate that I said this out loud. And if people want to throw it in my face in 2 months, that's fine. I understand. Utah is going to be 9-0, very likely ranked in the top 8 or 10, going to Baylor in mid-November.
This just goes back to Josh being a plant for me, because he's clearly hacked the group chat amongst my friends who are planning a trip to Waco for the Baylor game, and he just wants to spoil it ahead of time.
I don't know. The schedule is rugged, and they have to play all these teams, but these good teams have to go to Utah, which, based on the last year or two, it's not the house of horrors that it's been for opponents for the decade previous, but you still got to go in there and win a game at Rice Eccles, where it's a very tough place to play. It's a very tough place for the opponent to win when Utah really has it going. I don't know. And look, I qualify this with, everything's a wild card. Everybody's a wild card. Like Dampier's a wild card. You have so many new pieces. You have a new offensive coordinator. You have a Power 4 opener where I think we're going to learn not everything, but I think we're going to learn a lot on August 30th about what Utah's capable of. Man, I'm out there with it, man. They're starting 9-0.
I pulled up the schedule here because when you said that, I can get myself to that, right? I agree with you. I think there's enough here. You play Texas Tech early enough that I think they're still going to be figuring themselves out. They have a very weak schedule in those first 3 weeks. And so I don't know that we're going to know a ton about Texas Tech and who they could beat. They're going to win those 3 games. They're going to come into Rice Eccles Stadium at 3-0. If they don't, all the more reason to doubt Texas Tech, right? But I think this is a team where, Wyoming can be a trap, right? I get it. I still don't think Wyoming is the same trap that it was years ago. It's a new coaching staff. There's,
Sure.
It's not the same. Not to say that it can't. You're overlooking it. You're going into Texas Tech, especially if Utah does start 3-0. There's real possibility where you're kind of overlooking that game. But I think, the way that it sets up, Texas Tech, you get them early, so you've got an opportunity to kind of make that work. West Virginia, that's a challenge. You're going East Coast. We literally don't know anything about West Virginia and what they're going to be with this year with Rich Rod. They like to go high tempo. Rich Rod likes to go fast. That can be either great and destroy a team, or it can absolutely blow up in your mind and you go through possessions way too fast and the opponent wins, right? So I can get myself to there. I think the toughest stretch of that is going to be Arizona State and at BYU. I think if there's any holes in that 9-0, and there's plenty of holes in this, but I think if there's any that would cause this the most heartburn, I think it's that. You've got 2 teams, Arizona State, which I'm going to get into this maybe potentially later with a hot take maybe, is I don't think Arizona State's going to be as good as they were last year, but they're still going to be a tough out, right? They're not that easy, and then you have to go on the road to your rival in a heated battle where there's going to be so much animosity. There's always a lot of animosity, but I feel like this last year with how things have gone, it's the tables have turned where Utah is now trying to get that win, trying to stop the streak. It's not quite 9, but you've got so much going on where the Keanu Tenavasa stuff is still fresh of mind for the some players. It's going to be fresh of mind for the fans who are going to be crazy about that I think that's the toughest stretch. So I can see myself getting to 9-0, and I think that Baylor game is a tall test. But I don't know. That is definitely a good hot take, and I think you're going to have some BYU fans loving you for that one.
I think every game on the schedule is winnable. That's the thing that stands out the most about that take to me is you can see the route for them getting there. If they get their work done early against Texas Tech, you can use that momentum through Arizona State. And
You get the
I'll
bye
do
week
respect
there
to our
too, right?
brethren down south. Yeah, I'll do
There's
respect
a
to the
bye
brethren
slip
down
in there.
south.
Yeah.
They still haven't found a quarterback down there, So like, there's those holes like Josh was talking about are there. It holds in a
Like,
good way where Utah can actually win these games.
the more we talk this out, the more we think about it. Like, I don't think it's that crazy. Like, the road is there, and the tough teams come to Utah. It's like, yes, there's potholes, but like as Brian said, like you can see the path to 9-0. But that's us sitting here on August 13th. All right, so now snake draft comes back to me.
Yes, sir.
Again. Okay. I don't think this is that crazy either. I alluded to this in the mailbag already. This is Kyle Whittingham's last season as the head coach at the University of Utah. You just listen to what he has said, and you sort of look around at the Morgan Scalley situation and what Kyle has left on his contract. He's on the books for 26 and 27 at like 12 point some odd $1 million. I think if you let this go on another year, if Kyle wants to come back in 26, who knows what Morgan Scalley's, who knows where his head is at in terms of what his future is. I'm sure he thought that he'd be the head coach of Utah this year in 2025. I don't know how many people really thought that Kyle would come back this year. So it's an interesting amendment to his contract now, where he has to put in writing to the school whether or not he's going to retire, and there's a deadline on that. If they're playing in the Big 12 championship game, it's December 12th. If they're not, he has to let them know by December 5th. No matter what the record is, no matter if they win the Big 12, no matter if they go 5-7, this is Kyle Whittingham's final season. Morgan Scalley takes over this coming winter. And Kyle Whittingham, rightfully gets celebrated as the greatest coach in school history. I don't think that's bold at all. Decide where to put the statue at Rick Eccles. And it'll be a new era once the season ends.
Yeah, I don't really honestly have much to add to this one other than, it was trending that way last year, right? Like, and I think there was a lot of momentum for that. Being at that UCF game, I've talked about that many times on here, where it just felt like it was the end. Regardless of the outcome, regardless of everything that was going on, it felt like the end. And then suddenly it shifted where I think, whether that be donors, and I've heard that donors, the high-end donors want Kyle, and there's good reason for that, right? Like consistency, right? You don't know what you're going to get with Morgan Scalley. I think we do, but I think there's still always that doubt. There's always that fear. It's the same thing with Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, right? Like, okay, go ahead.
We don't know what we're getting with Morgan Scalley.
Well, sure.
Because he's never been a head coach, and he's never had to hire a staff, and you don't know what a staff looks like. I do understand the high-end boosters and the people who are really in charge, well above Mark Harlan, making these decisions, wanting Kyle forever. It's time to shift. It's time to shift, and you don't know. You don't fully know what you're getting with Morgan Scalley. You may have a fair, decent idea, but you do not have the full picture of what you're getting with Scalley as a head coach, and I understand why that might scare a lot of people.
And to that point, I will 100% agree, right? Like, I think if he can maintain a majority of the staff, there's probably a better chance that, like, there's some consistency. But at the end of the day, it's still him having to make the decisions, right? It's him trying to, pull the levers and do that, right? Like, I think there's a lot behind the scenes where he is much more involved than I think anybody wants to admit. And I think Kyle has kind of groomed him in a way to be able to help him take over that role so it's not there. But at the end of the day, Morgan has to be the one to make the decisions. He's got to be able to do everything. And I think there's a belief that there can be success, but you never really know until it actually happens. And so, I think we're getting to that point where it's this inflection point where you have to kind of move forward, right? I think the new era of college football suits more of the Morgan Scalley style in terms of how he wants to approach it as opposed to Kyle Whittingham. That's not to say that Kyle Whittingham can't be effective in this era. He's actually done a really good job of eventually pivoting and adapting to it. But I do think that there comes a point where you just kind of have to rip the Band-Aid off. You're not going to tell him to get out because he's still the greatest head coach that's ever walked through that door. But at the same time, you have to kind of rip that Band-Aid off and just say, hey, we got to go in a new era. We've got to move forward. It may be a struggle. It may not be the same consistency, at least initially. Hopefully that they move forward that way. At least that's their thought. But you kind of have to get to that point. You can't keep dragging this on, because I think there is some negativity in relation to recruiting, because you just don't know when the head guy is going to leave. And Morgan's, they've got their guy named so they can kind of spin that the right way, but you have to eventually get to that point where you move on.
I also think for Kyle's sake, there has to be an exit strategy at some point, because he's the kind of man mentally where he can just go forever. And as much as he deserves the opportunity to do what he wants and go out on his own terms and all those kinds of fun, warm, fuzzy feeling things, he's built something incredible at Utah. And if they want that legacy to continue, he's going to have to exit at some point. And I don't know that cracks were showing in the facade last year. I think it was just an amalgam of disasters all at once, right? And kind of a collection of things that have been building up for years.
Where am I? Amalgamum?
I read words on the internet.
Is it the word of the day? No, just kidding.
I don't know if that's even a word. I said it and I immediately thought, like, is that a word? It might not be.
Just one more point about Kyle. Once upon a time, I was talking with a high-ranking athletic department official about Kyle and the contract and the future, and this stuck with me. He told me, don't underestimate how much Kyle Whittingham likes money, and he is still owed a large sum of money for 26 and 27. Just something to keep in mind here, because his base will top out in 27 over $6 million. Just don't discount that as a factor, a motivational factor in this whole thing for Kyle. Just saying.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. All right, I'm going to go with my next hot take, and that, we've heard a lot about some of these freshmen that are making an impact in fall camp. It's hard to know, right? Like, we don't honestly know what the freshmen are going to bring, but I'm going to go with one of these freshmen as my next hot take, and I'm going to say that freshman tight end J.J. Buchanan, who just showed up in fall camp, he didn't even get the spring session. J.J. Buchanan is going to be a top 3 receiver for the Utes. Brian, you seem to like this one.
Everything that I've heard about J.J. Buchanan has been very positive. And I think as long as it's hard to filter through sometimes the things that leak out of the program, because and coaches are very guilty of this. They get super excited about certain guys who show potential and everything like that. And Utah keeps those walls super tight. But you can kind of sift through the hype and everything like that when it's all uniform, meaning it's coming from all different varieties of sources. And one thing that Freddie Whittingham said in your very first availability with him was, he said, I'm not going to tell you how high he jumps, or something to that nature. And that really stood out to me, because it's like, if they're already thinking about him in goal line packages, that means he's already made a very strong impression with his play and his practice and everything like that. His acclimation in the program. There's another big word for you there, Newman. Acclimation. Amalgam is not a word. Amalgam is. It was an amalgamation. That's what I should have said.
We're doing fact checks live on this episode too.
Okay. Speaking of live, I'm not going to lie to you guys. What was the hot take? Because my son woke up a half hour early. I ran upstairs and now I'm feeding with a bottle. No idea what.
You're good. The freshman tight end J.J. Buchanan is a top 3 receiver for the Utes.
I think that's fair. I mean, it's not Andy Ludwig anymore, but it's still Kyle Whittingham, and they're still going to try to employ the tight end as much as possible. Freddie Whittingham seems to get the most out of these guys, no matter where they are or who they are or where they're coming from. With Freddie Whittingham turned Dalton Kincaid into a very, very viable NFL tight end. You could tell me that a Utah tight end, regardless of year, could lead the team in receiving and I wouldn't argue. So if you're going to tell me he's going to be a top 3 receiver on the team, I think that's a very rational, obvious sort of take.
Love it. All right, Brian, you're up.
It's my turn to draft, right?
Yeah, you get 2 now.
Well, this is perfect. The leading pass catcher will not be a true receiver.
Ooh. Oh, okay, I have a question about that. Is Nate Johnson going to be considered in that?
That's a good qualifier, because that was the first one that popped in my head in terms of who potentially could lead this team in catches, yards receiving, all that kind of stuff.
Is he getting any QB reps?
In like, I would say more like trickeration type packages. I think they definitely have stuff where they want to be able to, let's say, flex Devin out and try to make things happen. But I would assume it's probably more Wildcat, if I'm being honest. But, we'll see.
Sorry.
I think I saw enough in the spring from him that there's not really a point in giving him QB reps. He needs receiver reps. He needs to get better at catching the ball, using that athleticism in actual game situations. I think he's come around to the fact that he's not going to be an NFL quarterback. And legitimately, if he wants to make it to the league, he's got to do it as an athlete who can run the ball, who can catch the ball, who can do all those things. And he seems bought in on it. And I know Utah likes it because that's what they wanted him to do originally. And so in that regard, I don't consider him a true receiver because, to Josh's point, he's going to take some wildcat snaps. I do think we see some dual QB backfield sets where maybe he's the running back. That's not insider info. That's just me thinking, like, how I would scheme it if I were an OC. But I also think, to that end, like, Jason Beck is really good at scheming his offense to what they have.
Mm-hmm.
They have running backs. They have tight ends. They have an athlete weapon in Nate Johnson. They don't really have a deep wide receiver core. And so when this offense needs to move the ball, I think they're going to use screenplays, backs out of the backfield, whatever trickeration they need to move the ball.
I want to ask you guys kind of a side tangent question on part of that. Why do you think Kyle Whittingham is so forward, or why was he's speaking so much about Nate Johnson as a utility player, Swiss Army knife? Why is he talking about Smith Snowden, Lander Barton, all these types of guys? Like, why the shift in his approach this year? Why do you think?
It's a great question, and I've been wondering that myself. Kyle Whittingham just never talks about his guys, his roster in terms of like tactical and what he plans to do and how he wants to use this one. The fact he got into 2 of his defensive guys potentially lining up on offense is a complete deviation from the past in terms of how he speaks to the media, what he wants out there publicly. Now, it doesn't really matter if he says anything because those guys haven't lined up on offense yet. So we don't know what to expect or what that might look like. But, yeah, it's a fascinating thing in terms of media and public perception and how he deals with it. I don't know why that shift, but it's a complete deviation from what he normally does.
I mean, I can offer a bit of a conspiracy theory here. Season ticket renewals are down. I think interest in the program is not what it used to be. And Kyle Whittingham's always very aware of what's being said about his program. And I think he is always attentive to that. And it's the old Stephen Godfrey rule for me. Coaches are never really talking to the fans. They're always talking to their team, to boosters, to people within the program in some way, shape, or form. And so I think a lot of it is Kyle is directing his messaging towards that. But I also think it's kind of shots across the bow at everybody who's like, Kyle can't change. He should have left last year. And I do think, well, he doesn't show it emotionally. It really gets under his skin when people talk about how he micromanages his offense coordinators. Because there were times, and I'm not reporting this, but I know through people who say stuff to me, that there were times where he's getting on Andy Ludwig's cases for not throwing the ball more, for not sending it downfield. Sure. And so I think he's really trying to sell not only the fan base and everybody else that things have changed, but also the program, because these kids have to feel it. That's a big part of them getting back on track is knowing that the kids believe that he really has changed. And I think I've seen other parts of it too. Like I haven't heard people complaining about not making weight this year, which that was a big deal in years past. And so if they really are adapting and moving forward, the best way for Kyle to say that is to come out of his shell and be like, yeah, we're going to use Lander. We're going to use Smith. We're going to take our best defensive players and try and remedy this thing on offense with them. I also want to add Smith and Lander as not true receivers to my little hot take, so I'm even more right.
and I think it's going to be a receiver this year. I think it will. I think Utah has enough in Tobias Merriweather and Larry Simmons that I think there's a high probability that the two of them could be there. But I think there's just so much on the plate for this offense that it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case, right? I do think they're going to try. Let me say this. I think Utah has to be able to have a true dual threat, or not a true dual threat, excuse me, a true deep weapon to be able to make this offense work the way that it needs to. So for that to work, I think you do have to have a wide receiver that's going to stretch the field. Is that Tobias Merriweather? Is it Larry Simmons? Is it somebody else? That remains to be seen. But I do think that for Utah to be successful, they do need somebody to be a true wide receiver to be able to get there. I wouldn't be surprised, like Josh said earlier about, J.J. Buchanan. You put a tight end in there, like I can buy myself in to say that that's the number one guy. But I'm going to say that it is a true wide receiver this year.
I feel like it's every year we're talking.
Wide receivers, who would you pick?
I'm going to go with Tobias. I think he's made a lot of progress. Although that, as I say that, Larry Simmons is kind of that's kind of nagging at me right now. But I'm going to go with Tobias right now. I was high in on Nate Johnson actually being up there. I think they're going to utilize him enough, but I think he's going to be more all-purpose yards. But I think Tobias has the best shot. But I wouldn't at all be surprised if it's Larry. Go ahead, Josh.
No, it's just this is a thing every year. Oh, they need a deep threat. They need to stretch the field. Who's going to be the deep threat? Can Devon Bailey turn into that guy? That was 2021. Hey, can Devon Bailey turn into that guy? Well, that was 2022. Well, how come there's no deep threat? It's like, well, you got 12 personnel and 13 personnel, and 2 of them wound up in the NFL, and one of them is going to be a 13-year pro. That's why it's like I just feel like this is a topic every single year talking about Utah football. It's a little tiresome at this point. Very tiresome at this point.
Real quick, some breaking news that just happened. Brett McMurphy is tweeting that the Big 12 will release availability reports for league football and basketball games this season. Sources told On3, Kyle Whittingham now has to give availability reports. Bam. That's a hot take in and of itself.
Boys, I'm telling you right now, your life is going to get easier, okay? As somebody who covered the SEC for a year, availability reports, streamlined things. There's less guessing, and you just sort of went through your having a much better idea of what's going on injury-wise. Just saying, your life's about to get a little bit easier.
I'm a happy man.
I've said for a long time that they needed to just do it because the mist around who was hurt and who was available was causing more distractions and issues. Because, for example, if I want to talk about Lance Holtzclaw, I have no idea if he's injured or not because I haven't been up to practice, and nobody up there who has been up to practice can really talk about it. But I haven't seen or heard a whole lot about him, so maybe he is injured, but maybe he's not. And now all of a sudden there's 5 minutes spent digging into the conspiracy about whether or not Lance Holtzclaw is going to play this year. They mentioned Dylan Battle came in a little dinged up. How dinged up is he? Is he going to play this year? Is he going to play 3 games, 5 games? And so the secrecy with that really creates more questions within your own fan base and your own support system than it does for the people that are trying to play you from week to week. So I don't think it does make media's job a ton easier, but I think it makes everybody's lives easier, especially Kyle's, especially the kids who are trying to hide whatever's going on or have to worry about going out in public. We saw that with Cam Rising's comments about how he didn't want to go out and talk to people and how badly that situation was botched. It's really, this may be the best news for Utah football in a long, long time because it removes.
It'll be interesting though. there's gray areas and there's ways that you can, I don't want to say deceive, but like, the SEC had these terms, probable, doubtful, out, blah, blah, blah. And Texas was really working along the margins a handful of times, especially like when Quinn Ewers was hurt, especially when, a couple of receivers were hurt. They were really working on the margins. How are we going to report these injuries? What connotation are we going to give it? So, yes, it streamlines things, but it does lead to other questions because just hypothetically, in a vacuum, if Devin Dampier shows up on a Big 12 injury report as questionable, well, what does that mean? Is he 60%? Is he 70%? It does lead to more questions. So
Kyle's going to love to do the game time decision.
Awesome.
Let's be real. He loves the game time decision. So if there's a way that he can still keep that nomenclature of his vernacular in there, like it's going to happen. So I'm waiting for questionable or game time decision for half the roster. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, Kyle Whittingham's version of Love Island is the injury report now. That's where he's going to create drama in people's lives.
Nice.
All right, Brian, go to your next hot take. I gave us a nice little sidestepping one, but it was important. So
it was, and I think it brought up a good discussion point too, because I've been trying to talk myself into Utah being good this season. I don't know if it's a hangover from last year, if it's the fact that I've seen these kind of cracks with the program for the last few years and never saw things get fixed or what. So I've tried to take a really positive slant with my takes and everything like that today. And so I'm going to keep that positivity going and say that Utah finishes with a top 25 recruiting class this year. Furlong's already out.
I don't know, man. Look, if you can get Celeste Moa to flip from Tennessee, I think that gives you the chance, right? I think you have to be able to get him and then flip one or two other guys for that to be a chance. As it stands right now, I would be surprised. I think they've done the bulk of their recruiting for 2026. I think some of that is changing in how they're using the transfer portal. I don't know. I don't see it as it stands right now, but if they can get a few of these guys to flip, that's the chance. I think Celeste Moa is the guy you have to flip, outside of some unnamed guy that we just don't know right now, which would be surprising. But I think Moa has to be the guy. Beyond that, I just don't see it happening.
It's asking a lot. I mean, it's not trending that way. Now, look, they play well. They play into January. Things can happen. Well, not January because signing day is December, but I think you get the point. If they're really good and things start happening that way, and and flips start happening, it's asking a lot for them to get into the top 25.
It's doable. I do think it's doable. I will say that.
Doable, sure, yes.
But I think they've got an uphill battle for sure.
It's hot. It's not. Look, it's not scorching.
No.
Like it's not scorching, but it's hot.
I think we've seen them do similar things in the past, where they make late runs in recruiting classes. But really, what this is saying in my mind and in my thought process is that they're going to have a good enough season to where recruiting is going to pick up through December. And like Josh said, you can tell kids to say, hey, hold off on committing in December. Let's do it in February. Let's get you more money. Let's get you whatever you need. And let's get you on board with a program that just won 3 games in the playoffs or whatever it is, right? Like there is a very convincing recruiting speech in that. And so I don't believe it necessarily, but I think there is, when you look at it nowadays, I think that stuff moves so much faster than it used to. And Utah has always kind of been these under the radar ninja spy recruiters in terms of Bert Ficklin was out of nowhere right before signing day last year. And he's turned out to be pretty good. I don't think he's a 4-star as a recruit, but I think they really like him in the program. So there is potential there for it. That said, it would be a major, major stretch for them to get there.
Yeah, they have to be successful this year for that to happen. So, All right, let's keep this engine going. We'll see if we go down and up and see what time looks like. You started us on this next round, so we'll go down and then back up and see how it goes. And then we'll go to Twitter hot takes and stuff like that. I've got a bunch. We could go all day. I think this is kind of fun examples to kind of go with.
Yeah.
I've been toying with changing my order. I've had, as we've gone through this, I've wanted to change something. So I'm going to shift to one that I wasn't expecting to get till later, but I think it's a fun one. And I'm going to go with freshman Dylan Curtis. He's the place kicker from Utah. He attempts and makes a 60-yard field goal. Brian's loving this one. Go for it.
This is Utah football.
Yeah. We're returning back to the glory days, right?
I love
I'm
it.
at a loss for words here.
I think it's insane. Like 60 yards is a lot for a freshman. And it'll have to be very situational for Kyle to do that, to take that risk. Because when you think about it, that means he's kicking from the 50-yard line. And you would never want to give up that short of a field unless it's right before halftime or right at the end of the game. And so you have to think, like, what are the odds that something like that actually happens in the course of a game? But I love it. Utah fans are going to love it. Like, this is so on brand. People are going to be like, we're back, baby. Kickers again. Kicker you.
He was doing stuff like that in videos, right? Like, he can do it. He's got the leg. I'll say that. So,
yeah, notice I never doubted his leg.
No,
like,
it is definitely situational for sure. I don't know. Newman, what do you got?
Nothing on that because that's insane. Like, that's a score hot take based on Utah football. That's a hot take.
I can't imagine like Kyle sending out the kick team and we're like, oh, they're gonna punt right here, and it's Dylan Curtis rolling out, and they're like, oh, okay, we're gonna go for this. And then if this happens and he makes it, man, that place is going to erupt.
Oh,
it's gonna
bananas.
be. I mean,
forget it.
Years ago, this wasn't even that many years ago, but like Josh, when you were covering the team, there was audible cheers when they got a touchback. That's how bad the kicking situation got with Utah. So, I mean, a 60-yarder would just blow the doors off of that place.
What season was that? I think it was 2021. They gave up a kickoff return for a touchdown against Weber to open the year. They had 2 punts blocked at Oregon State. They caught that game off. Do you remember that 21 season?
Dude,
on special teams? Kyle wanted to pull his hair out.
If Utah doesn't get that block kicked or the punt kicked in the Rose Bowl, I think they win. Ohio State was lost all momentum. You still had Jackson Smith and Jigba doing Jackson Smith and Jigba things. But if that punt's not blocked, I completely think that game's different.
That moment sort of gets lost in time because Rising was dealing. He wasn't matching C.J. Stroud throw for throw, but Rising was dealing before the concussion. He goes out. They bring in Bryson Barnes. They flushed that drive. But yeah, I mean that's an interesting what if that punt doesn't get blocked, does Utah win that game? Yeah, maybe.
All right, we on to the next one.
Yes,
go.
All right, we're gonna. I have 2, one serious, one more on the fun side. We're gonna move away from Utah here. I made friends with Arizona State fans the other day because I dared to say with Cam Scadaboo gone to the NFL that maybe Arizona State step back. The take here is that Sam Levitt will not throw for 3,000 yards.
Interesting.
He threw for 2,800 plus, 24 touchdown receptions. He was very, very good last year, but he had Scadaboo as the break glass in case of emergency, security blanket, 1,700 rushing yards, 2,300 all-purpose. Took a lot of the pressure off Sam Levitt. Scadaboo is gone. And I don't think we have enough evidence that Levitt can act as the guy, as the hunted, right, with Arizona State sitting there as reigning Big 12 champion. I just don't think we have enough evidence yet that Sam Levitt can be that guy and carry a program because he certainly was not asked to last year with Scadaboo doing what he did.
Yeah, this feeds into one of my hot takes actually that I think Arizona State's going to finish like 6th in the Big 12. I think the
Yep,
Cam
I agree.
Scadaboo loss is actually much bigger than people want to admit. Yes, they do bring back a majority of their offense, right? And I think that bodes well for them. I think that gives them a great jumping off point. Yes, they played tough against Texas, but once again, Cam Scadaboo was a major contributor to that. Look, like he's got Jordan Tyson to throw to. I think he's one of the best receivers in the country, especially in the Big 12. I don't know. Like I'm still leaving last season thinking like there's plenty about that wasn't real, right? Like I watched that game where Cam Rising was just absolutely horrendous, right? Like he couldn't grip a ball, he couldn't throw, he got injured 3 plays in again, and Utah still kept that game relatively close. It wasn't until late when they kind of started to pile on, and it was clear that Utah wasn't going to shift from Cam Rising. They weren't going to do anything different, and it was just it continued to snowball. So look, that's one game in the snapshot of a full 12 plus games, but I just don't buy Arizona State yet. I'm not quite there, even though if you ask me today, I would say that they're the top of the conference because until proven otherwise, they're the best, right? But I just don't know that I'm buying into them the same way as I would others. I could convince myself 100% that Baylor is a far better team, and they have a similar outlook in terms of bringing back roster talent. So I know a lot of people want to put a lot of stock into Sam Leavitt, and I think he's 100% talented. He's a great dual threat QB. But to your point, I don't know that we have enough data to really point to him as being this elite QB yet in the Big 12, knowing that he hasn't really had to do anything beyond Cam Scadaboo.
I also think that with Kenny Dillingham, he's been pushing up the hill mostly with this program, and now he's got to try and figure out how to hold it back as it's going down the hill because everybody is projecting them to be so high. And so if you're at the top of the mountaintop, that's the immediate cue for everything to fall apart and go down the hill. And I do think that as a young coach, it is a different element to try and keep your program at the top. And he mentions how he wants to be like Kyle Whittingham and run a program like Kyle. Kyle struggled with that too. I think Utah still struggles with the weight of expectations as a program. It's not where they're most comfortable. They would much rather fight as the underdog, and I think that's been proven over and over again. I thought it was easier for Arizona State to sneak in. There were a few games, the BYU game stands out the most that they probably could have and should have lost. So I don't know that it's like a super hot take.
I like it. All right, what you got next?
Shut up.
Oh, the dog's got one.
Hang on.
I love it.
You guys remember right as COVID was starting, there was like a small earthquake in Salt Lake City?
Yeah.
He's had PTSD since that when thunder happens. I apologize.
That's incredible.
Okay. I've been getting this question a lot since I started doing a little bit for KSL. The hot take is at some point this season, I am going to show up to a game at Rice Eccles Stadium.
Yes.
Wow. There we go.
I don't know. I don't know paying for it. If you have it in the budget, I'm down.
We're going to figure
that's
this out.
the hot take.
We're going to figure this out. That's not
That's
even a
the
hot take. We're going to do this.
Okay. At some point this season, I am going to show up at Rice Eccles for a game. To justify it, we're 4-5-0, 6-0, so we can justify that cost. Be that as it may, I will show up at Rice Eccles for a game. That's the take.
Okay. We're going to chat offline with this one. I like this. This is him pitching it, and I love it.
This really plays into my whole PSYOP Utah Athletic Department plan theory very, very nicely.
Yes, it does.
I almost wonder if maybe they want you to show up for the game in Provo to really rile up the fan bases on both sides.
Oh, man, maybe that's where
I didn't go to Utah County. Whoa. I didn't go to Utah County willingly when I was living there. I'm not doing it now, so you can skip that.
All right. So we're going to go Texas Tech or Arizona State, right? Like, that seems like Arizona State would be an interesting one.
I feel like it's destiny after the conversation we just had about Arizona State not being that good.
Touche.
Man,
we'll figure it out.
Okay, we're gonna figure this out. That's a great take. It's not even a hot take. It's a great take.
No, that's just that was just manifesting.
I appreciate that. I think some of these hot takes are just manifesting, right?
I hope so.
There you go. All right, am I up?
Is it my turn?
No, I think you're last.
Josh is up.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna go. How do I want to deal with it? I think both are hot takes. I'm gonna go with this one, and I don't know that I truly believe it, but we've heard a lot about how well this offensive line is going to be. It's being considered as one of the best in the country. I'm gonna say Utah's offensive line allows 2 or less sacks for Devin Dampier. Speechless.
For the year?
Yeah. I love it.
That's exactly the response I wanted.
For the
Yeah, that's what the response is supposed to be. 2?
Okay. He had 4 last year with New Mexico's offensive line.
Playing real defenses now, though. Well, it's the Big 12, maybe not. Better defenses in the Mountain West.
Okay, there you go. 2. What do you got, Brian?
So
No,
I
like
actually got into this one. I filled in on the Sean O'Connell show with James Peterson. I believe Josh even came on that day with us.
Yes, sir.
And talked with us about it. Well, both Joshes, I think both of you came on at one point in time. But the over/under that OC set on sacks allowed for the season was 9.5. So I went back and did research. Utah's never gotten below 13 sacks allowed. So if that's how it ends up going, that's incredible.
For context, they allowed 25 sacks last year. Isaac Wilson had 19. That may be the biggest scorchings. Well, we'll take the 60-yarder from Dylan Curtis, but the offensive line.
Well, I think the field goal is way more scorching of a take. Utah does have 2 NFL linemen up there protecting Dampier, but 2 is 2. Man, you knew the assignment, man. Good for you.
I had to come up with some, right? Like, they can't all be just like, eh.
Right. That's fair.
There you go, Brian. You got one. And then we'll end it with this last one. So we'll give Brian one last one, and then we'll just run through rapid fire with some of these Twitter hot takes that were given to me. So we'll go with that.
2017 was the last time a team nationally allowed less than 2 sacks, and it was Army.
Hey, look, we're gonna see. We're gonna see what happens. I didn't say I believed it fully, but
I love it. I'm here for it. It's the best part of the show so far. I thought I was gonna win showing up in a suit coat and a Hawaiian shirt. I didn't even have a chance. I do think my last hot take is a good one to finish on, though. Utah wins the regular season championship, loses in the title game, and gets an at-large bid for the playoff.
I mean, the road is there.
Yeah.
It's not that crazy. If you're playing in the Big 12 championship game, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're in line for an at-large. But if we're willing to go with my thinking that they're going to be 9-0, maybe a loss to Baylor, maybe they're 10-2, going to the Big 12 championship game, 10-3 and playing in a Power 4 title game might get you there. That's not that crazy.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I think it's definitely doable, right? Like, because obviously getting to the Big 12 title game is one that I think is doable for this Utah team. I'd be interested to see who the opponent is, right? And I think if they get there, there's not to say that they can't lose that, right? Like we saw in the Pac-12 era, they were clearly a better team at times, and then they lost. They were also clearly not the better team, and then they beat USC. So I think there's situational things here where I'd be really curious to see who the team is. Baylor would be my most likely chance there. Kansas State, maybe. I just don't buy Kansas State this year either. But I think, if it's Baylor, you're going down to Texas. You've got, right? That's where it is this year. I'm trying to remember where the championship is. Now I'm blanking on all this stuff. But yeah, I think
Dallas.
it is Dallas. Okay. It would be really interesting to me trying to figure that out. But I don't know that matters, right? Like, I think if Utah gets to that Big 12 title game, 12? Did I say 12? I thought I said 10 for a second. I called it spring camp the other day in the podcast to start it. So, things are going really well. But yeah, I think if they're even in that game, I don't know that it matters if you win. Obviously you want to win, but if that gives you a shot to be able to be in the playoff, I think they're going to be okay. All righty then. Go ahead, Bryan.
I felt like I was going to get more pushback.
I mean, I think just like with any team in this conference, not any team, but the top 8 teams-ish, I think that can be a reasonable take, right? I think, I don't know. I will say as part of this, the Big 12 will have a perception problem if it still continues this muddled mess, right? And so the one caveat there to that is you still may only get one team into the playoff if the Big 12 is a mess, right? Like if we're going down to week 11 or 12 and there's still 6 teams in contention for a Big 12 title game, I don't know that gives the Big 12 a chance. Now, look, we'll see what the records are and everything, but I just think you're already fighting an uphill battle with the Power 2, the Big 10, and the SEC. But Clemson, the ACC, some of these teams, they're getting more love already, and for good reason. But I think the Big 12 especially has to have teams step apart, right? Like that you have to have the Texas, Oklahoma type level of talent. You have to have that kind of stuff where it separates. The parity thing is not going to last very long for the Big 12 if it wants to be sustainable in terms of the college football playoffs. And so I think for me, that's where this conference needs to go. And so, yes, if you go to the Big 12 title game and you lose, I think maybe that's the bigger hot take that they get into the playoff as opposed to that kind of scenario, just because I think the perception that the Big 12 is going to face is going to be challenging based on the parity.
That was really the part to me that, like, I felt like the biggest stretch is the Big 12 potentially getting 2 teams into the playoffs, especially when you look at how much potential parity there are in the bigger leagues. The ACC is probably a one big conference, but the Big 10 and the SEC are 2, 3, maybe even 4 bid leagues potentially.
All right, let's jump into some rapid takes. We don't need to spend a ton of time on this. I just want to read a few of them. I don't want to read all of them, but let's go with Bones Johnson 11. Dampier passes for 2,700 yards, 18 touchdowns, 5 picks, rushes for 700 yards. That's actually less than what I chose. But he adds Parker rushes for 1,200 yards, and Utah goes 11-1, wins the Big 12 championship, and makes the playoff as a top 4 seed. That was a lot. So, as part of all of that,
whoa, okay.
Where to begin? Oh man,
you both went in dad mode with the hands there. That was excellent.
Simmer down now. All right.
Whoa, keep going.
That's all I got, man. Like, I just think there's so many things that have to hit in the name of Josh Pate and his bold predictions. This is like a 9.75, right? Or almost a 10, because you have to hit on so many things there. And I just think that's really tough, right? Dampier going for 27, 18, 5, whatever. I think that's actually reasonable. Parker going for 1,200, yeah, that can be reasonable. But everything else there still is tough. Granted, if they are the team that we think they are, getting a top 4 seed is doable. So maybe it isn't that hot. I don't know. I still think it's pretty hot.
It's hot.
It's hot. It's hot.
Utah's not even close. The one kind of statistical precursor that I'll give the Utes in terms of they have a potential to get in the playoff is in Pick 6 Previews 5-year whatever statistics. They're one of the top 15 teams, but they're not a blue chip ratio team. They're not a previous playoff team. They're not a top dollar spender. Dream on, big dreams. I don't want to crush anybody's hopes or anything like that, but I'm going to do it. There's just no way. This is one of those things where I'm really comfortable being wrong about this.
My 9-0 nonsense is on par with what we're talking about now. Everything has to go correctly. Everything. Yeah. Dampier has to be healthy. The key guys have to be healthy. Dampier has to translate. Jason Beck has to call the game well. You've got potholes all over the place. Look, I think they're going to beat West Virginia, but you have to go to West Virginia. That's a raucous wild environment, especially now with Rich Rod back. People are going to be up for that. There's a lot of potholes that you have to navigate around and a lot of things that have to go right. Is there a pathway for everything that we're talking about? Yeah, there's a pathway, but everything that you need to go right has to go right. Everything.
And
That's the
I'll,
problem.
and I'll end it on this one for that one. There is a change in the rankings, right? A top 4 seed isn't guaranteed to all the top 4 conferences. And so it's a straight seeding. Utah would have to be ranked 4th in the country, not out of the realm of possibility if they're being successful. I just don't see him being a top 4. There's too much talent out there. I just don't see it. So let's move on. From Ute-ish.
They would have to beat. Oh, sorry.
Oh, come on, Brian. Just kidding. No, I'm just kidding.
I was just gonna say they'd have to beat UCLA. UCLA would have to run the table then.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't have the non-conference. Like it's just there's. I think sometimes Utah fans don't realize that a 2004 season never happens for other programs. And they essentially got 2 of those in a 4-year span. And so they think it's going to happen all the time just because it happened in 2004 and 2008. And it's just, if you want to dream big. But it's just the actual path to get there, I don't know that it even exists.
And I would argue 9-3 or 10-2 is equivalent to what 11-1 used to be back in the day. Honestly, like I think you have much more freedom in the playoff era to get there, but I still don't think it's that easy to be able to get there. So
the number 3 and 4 SEC teams are going to get the benefit of the doubt for the number 2 Big 12 team, and let's keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, no, completely agree. All right, let's go to Ute-ish. Lander Barton will not grade out as Utah's best linebacker.
We probably should have done like buy or sell on these.
Okay, go with it.
I actually would buy that one. Because it's not about the grade with Lander. It's about what he can cause disruption-wise on the field. It's about interceptions. It's about sacks. It's about him being an agent of chaos. And in order for him to be freed up to do that, you want Levani Damuni to be the guy who's executing all the mundane. Like, for Lander to be the elite CEO and go have fun jet setting and doing all the cool things, he's got to have Levani as his CFO doing all the annoying work.
And I have nothing to add.
I would argue.
Say Levani Damuni.
Sorry, Josh.
No, that's it.
I would argue that the one that I could see the most likely is actually Jonathan Hall. John O'Hall has been the one that could have a higher probability. But he's still newish to the position group. It's been a year since they've switched him in fall camp. So, I mean, there's a chance. I do see a possibility there, but, we'll see. I think he's got the potential. Let's move on. Just a couple more of these. We'll go with Abe Lopez. We will see QB2 play a lot this year and not due to injuries. I'm selling.
No. That indicates that you're going to truck however many of your opponents, and it's going to be like 9 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and you see Wilson up on the sideline getting loose. Nah, I'm selling that.
Yeah, definite sell for me. I had an opposing coach who went up against Devin Dampier last season. Tell me that he's one of the best quarterbacks that he's ever seen. So you're basically saying that he's going to get pulled for Isaac Wilson or Bert Ficklin? Is that how I understand it?
Yep.
Oh, that's where you were going? I was taking that as they're up by 30 and you're putting in Wilson.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. That clip of Kyle Whittingham doing the onside kick against Joe Glenn back in the day is circulating around, so I'm sure Whit'll catch that in his media net at some point in time and just decide that he's going to go for 50 every game that he can.
Fair enough.
Yeah. It's a great hot take. I just don't want it.
No, I don't. I'm not going to. We're going to move on. All right, let's go with Red Kingdom 22. Luca Caldarella will lead the team in catches. I'm going to sell.
Selling that too.
I just don't see it from Luca. Like, he is kind of more of a doing the dirty work kind of guy.
How many balls will it take to lead the team in receptions? Ballpark. Whatever the number is, that's the point. He's not getting there.
Yeah, he's not. I don't think he's getting that. Like, he has to get a majority of the targets. He has to have a majority of the catch. I just don't like. I just don't see a world where that's the case. I think there's people that are looking at his usage in the spring game and kind of projecting that for the season. It's just, look, he's not even, in my estimation, even with the success that he's been having and the growth that he's been having, I don't even see him as kind of the true too deep, right? Like, I think he's fringe too deep. And so the fact that you're giving him the majority of the catches, I just don't see it. So, like, you could surprise me. I don't see a world where that's the case.
Yep.
Dorian Singer had 53 receptions last year to lead the team. Luka had 2.
That feels like a great place to stop. Great number.
I'm going to give you one more. How about one more, okay? Because it's going to be a hot one.
Just because I'm going to miss you guys when this is over.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, last one, and then we're going to wrap this up. From Nikki Tizzle 420. That's a bot, right? No, I'm just kidding.
No, Nikki's real. I met that man.
I'm just teasing, man. They are beating BYU by 3 scores in Provo.
No.
That took you a minute. You were thinking it still.
I was thinking it still, and I have to hop off here. I have another appointment. They're not beating BYU by 3 scores. They're going to beat BYU because they're starting 9-0, right?
Yeah.
3 scores on the road in Provo. Let's say that's a night game. No.
I'll add the caveat that if BYU's QB situation isn't figured out, there may be a possibility there. I don't buy it though, right? Like, I think this BYU defense is legit. I think Jay Hill knows what he's doing. That's not to say that Utah can't score on the defense, but I just, in this era, like, you would have to have multiple turnovers, which, once again, if the QB situation isn't figured out and BYU is spiraling, yeah, 100%, 3 scores is real easy, right? But I don't think these games ever really get that far off. Yes, you can point to the 54-10 or some other scenarios, but I just don't see a world where they beat them by 3. Now, with that said, if this is Kyle Whittingham's last year and he really wants to stick it to BYU, there may be a chance where he just goes full tilt and just destroys BYU if they can do it, right? But I think the odds are more likely than not that it's 100% under 21 points. But I just don't see it.
Yeah, the game that, like, maybe have been close to that since 54-10 in 2011 was the Vegas Bowl in 2015, where Utah was up 35 to whatever in the first quarter and then let BYU back into it. I just don't see, even with the QB stuff with BYU, that defense is really good. Like, I hate to say it, Utah fans, it is really good. Like, Jack Kelly, Isaiah Glasker, they are legitimate dudes defensively. I think last year's game is a perfect example of that. Utah didn't have a quarterback, and it was 21-20 or 22-21. So it's a good hot take. I just can't buy it in the sense of, like, that's a lot of scoring and a lot of things that would have to fall apart for that game to go that way.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I don't know. Yeah.
We're good.
All right, we're gonna end it there. I appreciate you guys checking in with us. We had fun. It was a little more than an hour. We had some fun. Hopefully, you learned some stuff, got some good takes there. But I appreciate you guys checking in with us, coming in on the podcast, and we'll do some of this more later. So with that, we're gonna sign off. Have a great day, and we'll chat with you later.